The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Riley didn't care. She sat in her command chair, watching the star chart scroll past on the main screen. 12 human ships moved through the darkness of space like tiny lights in an endless ocean. They had been traveling for 3 months now, mapping new systems and looking for planets that humans could live on. The bridge of the Meridian was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Davis sat at his station, running scans of nearby space. The other crew members worked at their posts, checking systems and watching for any sign of trouble. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. That changed in an instant. "Unknown contact," Davis said, his voice sharp with surprise. "Something big just appeared on our sensors." Riley sat up straight. "Where?" 3 million kilometers off our port bow. "It's huge, Captain. Bigger than anything I've ever seen." The main screen shifted to show the sensor readings. A massive shape floated in space ahead of them. It was dark, almost black, and it seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. The computer tried to measure its size, but the numbers kept changing. It was at least 10 times bigger than their largest ship, maybe more. "Any response to our scans?" Riley asked. Davis shook his head. "It's like the sensors just disappear when they hit it. I can't get a clear reading on anything except size and position." Riley felt a cold feeling in her stomach. In all her years of space travel, she had never seen anything like this. "Send a communication signal, all frequencies." The communications officer, Webb, worked at his station for several minutes. Then he looked up with a worried expression. "No response, Captain. It's like there's nobody home. Or they don't want to talk," Riley said quietly. She opened the channel to the other ships in their fleet. "All vessels, this is Meridian. We have an unknown contact. Large vessel, no response to communication attempts. Maintain current positions and keep your weapons ready." The responses came back quickly. 11 ship captains all confirmed they could see the strange vessel on their own sensors. Nobody knew what it was or where it had come from. Riley was about to order a closer scan when Davis gasped. "Captain, the horizon just disappeared." "What do you mean disappeared?" "I mean it's gone. 1 second it was there, the next second. Nothing. No explosion, no debris, no distress signal. It just vanished." Riley stared at the tactical display. The Horizon had been their fastest scout ship, positioned at the front of their formation. Now there was just empty space where it had been. "Try to raise them on communications," she ordered. Webb worked frantically at his station. "Nothing, Captain. No signal at all." Before Riley could respond, Davis spoke again, his voice filled with horror. "The Discovery is gone too, and the Pathfinder. One by one, the ships in their fleet simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone." The tactical display showed empty space where proud human vessels had been just moments before. The Endurance disappeared while sending a routine status report. The Explorer vanished in the middle of a course correction. The Phoenix blinked out of existence while its captain was talking to Riley on the radio. In less than 2 minutes, 11 ships and over 3,000 people had simply ceased to exist. The Meridian was alone. "Captain," Davis whispered, "the alien ship is moving." On the main screen, the dark vessel slowly turned toward them. It moved without any visible engines or thrust, gliding through space like a predator stalking prey. As it turned, Riley could see its true size. It was enormous, easily 1 kilometer long and half as wide. Its surface was completely smooth, like polished black stone. "All stop," Riley ordered. "Cut engines and go to minimal power." The ship went quiet as the engines shut down. They drifted in space, hoping the alien vessel might not notice them. Riley held her breath as the dark shape moved closer. "It's stopping," Davis reported. 200,000 kilometers away. For several minutes, nothing happened. The two ships faced each other across the void, human and alien, tiny and massive, prey and predator. Riley could hear her own heartbeat in the silence of the bridge. Then the alien ship began to glow. Soft blue light spread across its surface like water. Strange symbols appeared and disappeared on its hull. The light grew brighter and Riley realized the symbols were moving, changing, forming patterns that hurt her eyes to look at. "Captain," Webb said in a shaky voice, "I'm getting a signal." "Put it through." The speakers crackled, and then a voice filled the bridge. It was not human. It was cold and mechanical, like a computer trying to sound alive. "Human vessel," the voice said. "You have been selected for collection. Prepare to be boarded." Riley felt her blood turn to ice. "This is Captain Riley of the Earth ship Meridian. Who are you? What happened to our other ships?" "Your vessels have been processed and stored. Their crews are now part of our collection. You will join them shortly." "Stored?" Riley stood up from her chair. "What do you mean, stored?" "We are the collectors. We preserve civilizations before they destroy themselves. Your species shows promise, but you are still primitive. We will save your knowledge and your people before you make yourselves extinct." Riley looked around her bridge. Her crew stared back at her with frightened eyes. They were alone against something that had just made 11 ships disappear without effort. "We don't want to be preserved," Riley said. "We want to be left alone." The alien voice sounded almost amused. "What you want is not important. What matters is preservation. Your species will be studied and cataloged. Your best examples will be kept alive in our archives. The rest will be recorded and stored." Davis suddenly looked up from his station. "Captain, something's wrong with our jump drive. It won't activate." Riley's heart sank. They were trapped. Whatever these collectors were, they had technology far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. They could make ships disappear, disable jump drives, and speak perfect English. Humanity was helpless against them. "You have 1 hour to prepare," the alien voice continued. "Our boarding teams will arrive shortly. Resistance is pointless. Submit peacefully and your death will be quick." The signal cut out, leaving the bridge in terrible silence. Riley looked at her crew. They were good people, brave people who had volunteered to explore the unknown reaches of space. Now they were going to die because they had found something that was hunting them, but Riley was not ready to give up. Not yet. The boarding pods came like silver tears falling through space. Riley watched them approach on the main screen, counting at least a dozen small craft detaching from the massive alien vessel. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming, with the same blue light that had covered the collector's ship. Riley had spent the last hour preparing her crew for what was coming. They had hidden data cores throughout the ship, destroyed sensitive files, and armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find. It wouldn't be enough, but they would not go quietly. The first pod attached to their hull with a soft thud that echoed through the ship. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the Meridian shook as the aliens began cutting through their outer walls. Riley could hear the high-pitched whine of energy tools slicing through metal. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's intercom. "Remember what we discussed. Stay calm, watch everything, and look for any weakness. Humanity is counting on us." The bridge doors exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Strange figures flowed into the room like liquid shadow. They were tall and thin, with pale gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Their heads were large and oval, with huge black eyes that reflected everything around them. They wore no clothing, but their skin was covered in the same glowing, blue symbols that had appeared on their ship. The lead alien moved forward with fluid grace. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere and nowhere, as if the air itself was talking. "I am Designate Prime of Collection Fleet 7, it said. "You will surrender your weapons and submit to processing." Riley stepped forward, her hands empty but her chin raised high. "I am Captain Riley. These are my people. What gives you the right to collect us like animals?" The alien's huge eyes focused on her with disturbing intensity. "Right is a concept for primitives. We preserve what would otherwise be lost. Your species destroys faster than it creates. Left alone, you will extinct yourselves within 500 of your years. That's our choice to make. Choice is an illusion. All species follow predictable patterns. Yours is no different." 2 more aliens moved to scanning stations around the bridge. They touched the human controls with their long, thin fingers, and the machines began working for them as if they had built them. Information flowed across the screens too fast for Riley to follow. "Interesting," Designate Prime said as it studied the data. "Your technology is more advanced than expected for your development level. Most species at your stage have barely achieved faster than light travel. Davis, still at his station, glared at the aliens. Humans are good at building things. Yes, the alien replied. Your species shows unusual innovation. This makes you more valuable for our collection. Riley felt sick as she watched the aliens examine her ship and crew like scientists studying insects. What happened to the people on our other ships? They have been processed. Their bodies are in stasis aboard our vessel. Their minds have been copied and stored in our archives. They continue to exist, but in a more perfect form. You mean they're dead? Death is a primitive concept. We prefer preservation. Your people are now immortal, kept forever in our collection. Webb, the communications officer, stood up slowly from his station. What about Earth? What about our families? Designate Prime turned its attention to him. Earth will be harvested when our main fleet arrives. Your entire species will join our collection. It is an honor few races receive. Riley's hands clenched into fists. How many species have you collected? 47,316. The alien replied without hesitation, each one preserved at the peak of their civilization, before they could destroy themselves through war, disease, or environmental collapse. And how many chose to be preserved? For the first time, the alien seemed to pause. Choice is not relevant. Preservation is necessary. Riley noticed something in that pause, a tiny hesitation that hadn't been there before. She pressed forward. So none of them chose this. You just took them. We saved them. From what? From living their own lives? The alien's large eyes blinked slowly. From the chaos of uncontrolled existence, order must be maintained. Patterns must be preserved. Riley looked around the bridge at her crew. They were listening to every word, watching the aliens work, learning everything they could. She had an idea forming, something desperate and probably stupid, but it was better than nothing. Tell me about patterns, she said. You said all species follow predictable patterns. What pattern do humans follow? Designate Prime seemed pleased by the question. Humans are aggressive but intelligent. You expand rapidly but waste resources. You develop powerful weapons but use them against each other. You create art and music but also create pollution and war. The pattern is clear. And based on this pattern, you know what we'll do next? Of course. You will attempt to fight us, fail, and then try to bargain for your lives. When that fails, you will beg. Finally, you will accept your fate. All species follow this sequence. Riley smiled, and the expression seemed to confuse the alien. What if we don't? You will. The pattern is absolute. But what if humans are different? What if we don't follow your pattern? The alien moved closer to her, its huge eyes reflecting her face. No species is different. All life follows predictable behaviors. This is why our preservation methods are so efficient. Riley's smile grew wider. Efficiency. That's important. To you, isn't it? Order and efficiency maintain the universe. Chaos must be eliminated. Then you have a problem, Riley said, because humans love chaos. The alien stepped back, its smooth features showing something that might have been confusion. Around the bridge, other aliens stopped their work and turned to listen. Explain, Designate Prime demanded. Riley looked at Davis, who was grinning despite their desperate situation. Webb was nodding, understanding what she was getting at. The rest of her crew watched with growing hope. You've collected 47,000 species, Riley said. But I bet none of them were like us. I bet they all followed your patterns, did what you expected, made logical choices. Logic is universal. No, Riley said firmly. Logic is boring. Humans do illogical things all the time. We take stupid risks. We make crazy decisions. We sacrifice ourselves for no good reason. We fight battles we can't win and love people who hurt us. We're completely unpredictable. The alien was silent for a long moment. Riley could see its mind working, processing this new information. Finally, it spoke. You are attempting to manipulate us through deception. Am I? Riley asked. Or am I telling you something your databases don't account for? Something that makes humans different from every other species you've collected? She could see doubt in the alien's huge eyes. For the first time since the boarding had begun, the collectors didn't seem completely certain of themselves. Riley had found their weakness. Now she just had to figure out how to use it. Riley could see the confusion spreading through the alien boarding team like a virus. The collectors kept looking at each other with their huge black eyes, communicating in ways humans couldn't understand. Their perfect coordination was breaking down as they tried to process what she had told them. Designate Prime stood motionless for several long seconds, its smooth gray features completely blank. When it finally spoke, its voice lacked the cold certainty it had shown before. Your statement requires analysis, it said. Human behavior patterns are being reviewed. More aliens entered the bridge, moving with less fluid grace than before. They seemed agitated, uncertain. Riley realized they were probably receiving new data about human psychology from their ship's computers, and that data wasn't matching what they expected to find. Captain, Davis whispered, the reactor is still under our control. They haven't touched the engineering systems. Riley nodded slightly, keeping her eyes on the alien leader. An impossible plan was forming in her mind. Something so stupid and reckless that it just might work. The key was that the collectors expected logical behavior from their prisoners. They had probably never encountered a species willing to destroy itself rather than submit. Designate Prime, Riley said loudly. I want to make a deal with you. The alien's head turned toward her like a predator focusing on prey. Humans do not possess anything we require. We have something you've never encountered before. Something that 47,000 other species couldn't give you. Specify. Riley smiled, and this time her expression was genuinely happy. We can show you what real chaos looks like. Before the alien could respond, Riley activated her personal communicator. With a quick gesture, throughout the ship, her pre-arranged signal went out to every crew member still alive. All hands, she said calmly. Execute protocol insanity. The collectors had perhaps 3 seconds to process this unexpected command before the meridian exploded into controlled madness. Every human on the ship began acting in ways that defied all logic and reason. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Torres began overloading the reactor while singing ancient Earth songs at the top of her lungs. In the weapon bays, the gunners started firing at random into empty space while dancing. The medical team released laughing gas through the ventilation system, while the navigation crew set course for the nearest star. On the bridge, Davis stood up and began reciting poetry, while he systematically deleted the ship's entire database. Webb started broadcasting children's nursery rhymes on all frequencies while spinning in his chair. The security chief, who had been tied up by the aliens, somehow escaped and began juggling plasma grenades. The collectors stood frozen in bewilderment as chaos erupted around them. Their advanced minds, designed to predict and control every situation, simply couldn't process what they were seeing. Humans were supposed to fight or surrender, not throw a party while destroying their own ship. What is the purpose of these actions? Designate Prime demanded, its voice rising for the first time. Riley laughed as she watched her crew perform their beautiful madness. There is no purpose. That's the point. We're doing this because we can, because it's fun, because it doesn't make sense. The ship shuddered as Torres pushed the reactor past its safety limits. Red warning lights flashed throughout the bridge and alarms started wailing. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone float for a moment before slamming back down. You are destroying your own vessel, another alien said, its mental composure completely shattered. Yes, Riley shouted with glee. Isn't it wonderful? Davis finished deleting the computer files and moved to the pilot's station. Without asking permission, he engaged the main engines and pointed the ship directly at the massive collector vessel. Captain, he called out cheerfully, should I ram them? Absolutely, Riley replied, but make sure to sing while you do it. Davis began belting out an old space shanty as he pushed the engines to maximum power. The Meridian leaped forward like an arrow shot from a bow, accelerating directly toward the alien ship. The collectors on the bridge began moving frantically, trying to regain control of the situation. But their movements were no longer coordinated. They bumped into each other, gave conflicting commands, and stared in horror at the chaos surrounding them. This behavior serves no logical purpose, Designate Prime said, its voice filled with something that might have been panic. Logic is overrated, Riley said as she helped Webb broadcast a recipe for chocolate cake on all emergency frequencies. Humans figured that out a long time ago. The collector ship was growing larger in the main view screen. Riley could see other alien vessels moving to intercept them, but they seemed confused about how to respond to an enemy that was actively trying to destroy itself. "You will all die," Designate Prime warned. "Probably," Riley agreed. "But we'll die free, and we'll take some of you with us. That's more than your other 47,000 species managed." She turned to address her crew, who were still performing their mad dance of destruction throughout the ship. "Attention, everyone. This is your captain speaking. In about 30 seconds, we're going to hit that alien ship at full speed while our reactor explodes. Any last words?" The response came back from all over the ship, dozens of human voices shouting as one, "For Earth, for humanity, for the right to be beautifully, chaotically human." Designate Prime made a sound that might have been a scream of frustration. "Your actions are meaningless. You achieve nothing." Riley grinned as the alien ship filled their entire view screen. "We achieve something you can't understand. We prove that some things are worth dying for. And we show you that humans don't follow anyone's patterns, not even our own." The collision alarm started screaming. 10 seconds to impact. The reactor warning lights changed from red to white, indicating imminent overload. Riley could feel the ship vibrating as Torres pushed the engines beyond their design limits. 5 seconds. Riley looked at Designate Prime one last time. The alien was staring at her with an expression of complete incomprehension, as if it was seeing something that shouldn't exist. "Tell your people," Riley said, "that humans prefer beautiful chaos to perfect order. And tell them we're coming." 3 seconds. Riley closed her eyes and thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who would soon face the same choice her crew had made. She hoped they would choose chaos. 2 seconds. The Meridian struck the collector ship at full speed just as its reactor went critical. The explosion tore through both vessels like a miniature star being born. For one brief, shining moment, human chaos and alien order collided in a burst of light that could be seen across the entire system. When the light faded, pieces of both ships drifted in space like scattered leaves. The escape pods that Riley had secretly launched during the chaos were already scattering in all directions, carrying her surviving crew members to safety on random courses that no computer could predict. The collectors had learned their first lesson about humanity. It would not be their last. 6 months after the Meridian incident, the survivors finally made it home. Their escape pods had scattered across local space like seeds on the wind, each one following a different random path to avoid detection. Some had been picked up by merchant ships, others by military patrols, and a few had drifted for weeks before being found. Davis was the first to reach Earth. His pod had been discovered by a cargo freighter near the Jupiter mining stations, and within days he was sitting in a conference room at Fleet Command, telling his story to a group of admirals who barely believed what they were hearing. 47,000 species, Admiral Brooks repeated, her weathered face grim. "And they're coming for Earth?" "Yes, ma'am," Davis replied. "The collectors don't negotiate, they don't trade. They just take entire civilizations and store them like books in a library." Admiral Brooks was the highest-ranking officer in the Human Defense Force, a woman who had spent 40 years protecting Earth's colonies from pirates, rebels, and the occasional alien contact. She had never faced anything like this. "Tell me again about their technology," she said. "How did they make our ships disappear?" Davis shook his head. "I don't know. One moment our fleet was there. The next moment it was gone. No explosions, no debris, nothing. It was like they had been erased from reality." The other officers around the table exchanged worried looks. Earth's military was strong, but it was designed to fight human enemies using human technology. Ships that could vanish without a trace were beyond anything they had prepared for. What about their weaknesses? Asked General Martinez, the head of planetary defense. There has to be something we can use against them. Davis smiled for the first time since entering the room. Captain Riley figured it out. They can't handle chaos. Everything they do is based on patterns and predictions. When we started acting crazy, they completely fell apart. Over the following weeks, the other survivors arrived with similar reports. Webb confirmed that the aliens had seemed confused by human unpredictability. Torres, the chief engineer, had noticed that their technology worked perfectly until humans started doing unexpected things. Even the ship's doctor had seen how the collectors couldn't process illogical behavior. Brooks called a meeting of Earth's top military minds. The conference room was packed with generals, admirals, scientists, and strategic planners. On the main screen, a star chart showed the edge of human space where the first collector scouts had been detected. "Ladies and gentlemen," Brooks began, "we are facing an enemy that has conquered 47,000 civilizations. They have technology we can't match and weapons we can't understand. In a conventional war, humanity would last about 5 minutes. Murmurs of concern rippled through the room, but Brooks raised her hand for silence. "However," she continued, "we have something they've never encountered before. We have the ability to act completely insane." She turned to Davis, who stood up to address the group. "The collectors expect logical resistance. They're prepared for desperate last stands, strategic retreats, and negotiation attempts, but they're not ready for enemies who deliberately make bad decisions." "What are you suggesting?" asked Admiral Chen, commander of the Outer Defense Fleets. Brooks activated a new display showing Earth's military assets. "I'm suggesting we throw out every rule of warfare ever written. We're going to develop a defense strategy based entirely on doing things that make no tactical sense." She pointed to the screen, which now showed ship deployment patterns that looked like random scribbles. "No battle lines, no strategic formations. Ships will attack alone, retreat when they're winning, and work together only when it makes things worse." General Martinez frowned. "Admiral, that sounds like a recipe for disaster." "Exactly," Brooks replied with a grin. "It is a disaster. The most beautiful, chaotic disaster in military history, and that's why it might actually work." The meeting continued for hours as they developed what would become known as the Madman Protocol. Every aspect of human military doctrine was turned upside down. Captains would be trained to make bad decisions. Fleets would be organized randomly. Battle plans would be written by throwing dice. "What about our allies?" asked Colonel Park, who commanded the defense satellites around Mars. "The Centauri colonies will want to coordinate with us." Brooks shook her head. "No coordination, no communication. Every human settlement will defend itself using completely different tactics. The collectors won't be able to predict what any of us will do because we won't know ourselves." Dr. Kim, Earth's leading military psychologist, raised her hand. "Admiral, this is fascinating in theory, but how do we train soldiers to act irrationally? Military discipline is based on following orders and making logical choices." "We'll retrain them," Brooks said simply. "New recruitment standards, new training programs, new command structures. We're going to create the most unpredictable military force in galactic history." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what she was proposing. They were talking about rebuilding humanity's entire approach to warfare in a matter of months. "There's something else," Torres said from her seat near the back of the room. "When I was overloading the reactor on the Meridian, I noticed something about their ship. It was completely automated. I don't think the collectors actually understand the technology they use." This caught everyone's attention. Brooks leaned forward. "Explain." "Their ship worked perfectly as long as everything went according to plan. But when we started doing crazy things, it seemed like their systems couldn't adapt. It was like they had inherited technology from someone else and never learned how to modify it." Dr. Kim nodded thoughtfully. "That would make sense. If they've been collecting civilizations for thousands of years, they would have access to technologies from advanced species, but they might not understand the science behind it." "Which means," Brooks said slowly, That when we break their patterns, we might be breaking more than just their tactical planning. We might be breaking their technology too. The implications were staggering. If the collectors relied on predictable patterns to operate their ships and weapons, then human chaos might neutralize their technological advantage. Brooks stood up and looked around the room at the faces of Earth's defenders. They were scared, confused, and probably thought their commanding officer had lost her mind. But they were also determined. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "we have 6 months before the collector main fleet arrives. 6 months to rebuild our military from the ground up. 6 months to prepare for the most important battle in human history." She paused and smiled. 6 months to prove that beautiful chaos is stronger than perfect order. Outside the conference room windows, Earth turned slowly in space, blue and green and alive with 4 billion people who had no idea their entire species was about to gamble its existence on the power of acting crazy. The storm was coming, but humanity was getting ready to meet it with the most illogical defense in the history of warfare. The invasion began at dawn on a Tuesday, which was somehow perfect for what humanity had planned. Collector ships emerged from jump space at 17 different locations across human territory, their dark hulls gleaming with alien symbols. They came in perfect formation, expecting to find panicked defenders making desperate last stands. Instead, they found madness. The first sign that something was wrong came when a single human cargo ship flew directly at the largest collector vessel, while broadcasting cooking recipes and children's songs. The aliens prepared to simply delete the ship from existence, but then it did something unexpected. It exploded voluntarily, just outside their weapons range, creating a debris field that served no tactical purpose whatsoever. Admiral Brooks watched the battle unfold from Earth's command center, surrounded by screens showing the chaos erupting across human space. Her carefully planned insanity was working even better than she had hoped. "Report from the Jupiter sector," called out Lieutenant Hayes. Captain Morrison just abandoned a perfectly defendable position to attack an empty area of space. "The collectors are trying to figure out why." "Excellent," Brooks replied. "What about the Mars defense grid?" "General Martinez detonated half the orbital platforms for no reason. The collector ships are moving away from the remaining platforms because they think it's a trap." Brooks smiled. It was a trap, just not the kind the aliens expected. The remaining platforms were indeed armed with hidden weapons, but they wouldn't fire until the collectors came back to investigate. The key was making the enemy think in patterns that didn't exist. Across the solar system, human defenders were performing their beautiful symphony of chaos. Near Venus, Commander Lee had ordered her squadron to fly in random directions while firing at their own ships. The collectors couldn't understand why humans were shooting at each other, so they held back, afraid of walking into some incomprehensible strategy. At the asteroid mining stations, Captain Garcia had loaded a freighter with mining explosives and crashed it into an asteroid field. The explosion created a massive debris cloud that blocked sensors and made navigation dangerous. It served no military purpose, but the collectors spent precious time trying to analyze what the humans had accomplished. "Admiral," called out Major Webb from the communications station, "we're getting reports from the outer colonies. The Centauri Defense Force just surrendered to the collectors." "Surrendered?" Brooks asked. "Yes, ma'am. Then they blew up their own ships while the aliens were boarding them. All hands lost, but they took out 3 collector vessels." Brooks nodded grimly. The plan was working, but the cost was terrible. Human ships and stations were being destroyed across known space. Thousands of people were dying every hour, but they were taking aliens with them, and more importantly, they were breaking the collector pattern recognition systems. "What's happening at Earth?" she asked. "The lunar defense platforms are operating normally," Hayes reported. "No sign of enemy approach yet." That was according to Plan 2. Earth's defenses looked conventional and logical, which would draw the main collector fleet like a magnet. Brooks was counting on the aliens, thinking they could finally face normal military resistance after dealing with chaos everywhere else. On her personal screen, Brooks watched feeds from human ships across the battle zone. She saw Captain Torres ram her destroyer into a collector cruiser while playing classical music at full volume. She watched Lieutenant Davis pilot his fighter in a perfect figure-8 pattern around enemy ships, accomplishing nothing but confusing their targeting systems. Most beautiful of all, she saw the crew of the merchant vessel Harmony abandon their ship in escape pods, then remotely piloted into the middle of a collector formation, where it exploded like a firework. The explosion did minimal damage, but it created such a spectacular light show that the alien ship scattered in all directions. "Status report on collector forces," Brooks commanded. The tactical officer, Colonel Park, looked up from her display. "They're slowing down, Admiral. Their advance has ground to a halt in most sectors. They seem to be waiting for new orders." "They don't know how to handle us," Brooks said with satisfaction. 47,000 species, and none of them ever fought back with pure chaos. Hours passed as the madness continued. Human forces across the galaxy performed increasingly impossible acts of tactical insanity. Ships formed heart-shaped attack formations. Stations self-destructed while broadcasting poetry. Fighters attacked in groups of 13 while flying upside down for no reason. The collectors, meanwhile, began making mistakes. Their perfect coordination started breaking down as their computers failed to predict human behavior. Ships collided, with each other trying to avoid attacks that never came. Formations dissolved when commanders couldn't agree on how to respond to enemies that seemed to be following no strategy at all. "Admiral," Hayes called out urgently. "Massive collector, fleet approaching Earth. 50 vessels, including their command ship." Brooks stood up and looked at the main tactical display. The alien fleet was indeed massive, easily the largest single force humanity had ever faced. But they were moving in perfect formation, following predictable patterns, relying on the logic that had served them for thousands of years. "All Earth defense units," Brooks announced over the fleet channel, "execute final protocol." Across Earth's solar system, the waiting began. Human ships powered down their weapons and lowered their shields. Defense stations stopped broadcasting warnings and went silent. The lunar military base opened its hangar doors and began transmitting surrender signals. The collector fleet moved closer, confident that they were finally facing normal military behavior. Their sensors detected no hidden weapons, no trap formations, no unexpected tactics, just a defeated enemy offering submission. They were completely unprepared for what happened next. When the alien fleet reached optimal range, every human ship and station simultaneously activated hidden quantum bombs. Not the normal fusion weapons the aliens expected, but experimental devices that Torres and her engineering teams had built during the 6 months of preparation. These weapons didn't just explode, they tore holes in space itself. The quantum detonations created cascading failures in reality. Space folded in on itself, gravity went sideways, and time moved in circles. The collector ships, with their perfect technology and logical systems, couldn't adapt to physics that had gone completely insane. Brooks watched in amazement as alien vessels were scattered across dimensions. Some ships aged 1,000 years in seconds and crumbled to dust. Others were frozen in time, their crews trapped like insects in amber. The massive command ship tried to escape but flew into a gravity well that shouldn't have existed, stretching it like rubber before snapping it back into 1,000 pieces. The quantum chaos spread outward from Earth like ripples in a pond. Collector fleets throughout human space found themselves caught in the expanding wave of impossible physics. Their pattern recognition systems, designed to work in an orderly universe, simply shut down when faced with reality that refused to follow rules. "Quantum cascade successful," Torres reported from her engineering station. "The space-time distortions are spreading faster than light. All collector vessels in human territory are affected." Brooks looked at the tactical display, which now showed a region of space where the laws of physics had taken a holiday. Collector ships drifted helplessly in bubbles of altered time, their crews probably wondering what had gone wrong with their perfect conquest. But the most beautiful part was still to come. As the quantum effects began to stabilize, something unexpected happened. The scattered human ships, the ones that had been flying crazy patterns and making illogical attacks, found themselves perfectly positioned to take advantage of the chaos. Their random movements had accidentally put them in the right places at the right times. Captain Morrison, who had earlier abandoned his defensive position to attack empty space, now found himself behind a crippled collector cruiser. Lieutenant Hayes, who had been flying in circles for no reason, was suddenly in perfect position to rescue the crew of a destroyed human frigate. The mining explosions that Captain Garcia had set off created safe paths through the quantum distortions. It was as if the chaos itself was helping humanity win. "Admiral," Park called out in wonder, "the surviving collector vessels are retreating. They're jumping out of human space." Brooks watched the alien ships flee, their perfect formations broken and their confidence shattered. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the collectors had encountered something they couldn't understand, couldn't predict, and couldn't defeat. "Send a message to all human forces," Brooks ordered. "Mission accomplished. Earth survives. Humanity survives." Cheers erupted throughout the command center as the news spread. But Brooks wasn't done yet. She opened a channel to the retreating collector fleet. "Unknown alien vessels," she said calmly. "This is Admiral Brooks of the Human Defense Force. We hope you enjoyed your visit to human space. Please feel free to come back anytime you want another lesson in chaos theory." She paused, then added, with a smile, "And tell the rest of your collector friends that humans don't follow anyone's patterns. We make our own rules and we break them whenever we feel like it." The alien ships disappeared into jump space without responding, but Brooks knew they had heard every word. More importantly, they would never forget what had happened here. In the months that followed, reports began filtering in from across the galaxy. Other alien civilizations had detected the quantum distortions from the battle. Some were terrified by the implications of a species that could break physics itself. Others were inspired by the example of successfully resisting the collectors. Most interesting were the reports from species that had been marked for collection but not yet harvested. They began adopting what they called human tactics, unpredictable strategies, chaotic formations, and illogical decisions. The galaxy was learning that there was an alternative to perfect order. Brooks stood in her office months later, looking out at Earth's blue skies and thinking about the future. Humanity had survived its greatest test, but more importantly, it had proven something fundamental about the power of chaos over order. Webb entered her office carrying a data pad. "Admiral, we're getting reports from deep space. The collectors have updated their databases. Humanity has been reclassified." "Oh?" Brooks asked. "What's our new designation?" Webb grinned. "Species too chaotic to safely engage. We're the first civilization to earn that classification." Brooks laughed. "Perfect. File that under our greatest military achievements." As Webb left, Brooks returned to the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, 47,000 preserved civilizations waited in collector archives. They had all followed logical patterns, made reasonable decisions, and accepted their fate when resistance seemed hopeless. But humanity had chosen a different path. They had embraced beautiful chaos, celebrated glorious madness, and proven that sometimes the best strategy is to have no strategy at all. Earth turned slowly in space, alive with 4 billion people who had learned the most important lesson in the universe: that freedom is worth fighting for, even when fighting makes no sense at all. The age of beautiful chaos had begun.